Emotional state is extremely underrated. Emotions, in the past were treated like, just emotions. Just emotions. Emotions dictate the length of your life and health. They are to be taken seriously. So emotional state is key.
What if the key to healthier relationships, clearer communication, and stronger mental health wasn't found in doing more, but in drawing the line? In this week's episode, I'm joined by a coach, author, and creator of the Boundaries Health Check, the deeply connected, soulful, and insightful Cyndi McCoy, who loves to explore and discuss how personal boundaries shape every part of our lives. This episode is an invitation to check in with yourself toward the life and relationships you actually want.
Investing your time into self-care, not selfishness, but genuine what's healthy and right. So investing in that and identifying it, I call it destinations because there are things that you want to maintain. And if you identify that, it helps you easily match or not match with other people in your personal life and career.
Cyndi, welcome to Share.
Thank you.
I'm excited to jump into today's conversation, and I know there's going to be a lot of insights. Yes, we're going to dive into some boundaries. But firstly, I want to ask you, Cyndi, obviously we talk about boundaries. You crossed international boundaries and you came all the way from New York to Australia.
Yeah, I did. I'm in Brisbane now. I came to stay only a month and I fell in love with the people. Yeah, Australians are better for my nervous system.
Yeah. And we've got a pretty good environment here in Australia as well.
Yeah. The environment includes the people for sure. The sun is pretty great too. Well, except sun cancer, skin cancer, but other than that.
So you came to stay for a month and you ended up staying a lot longer.
Yeah.
You're now a dual citizen, of Australia and the US?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So tell me, you came over for a month just as a holiday?
Yeah. Look, New York is very busy. Just to bring it straight to relevant to the topic of boundaries, in your relationship with yourself, the environments that you allow, that you put yourself in, that you choose, can either make or break your relationship with yourself, your sanity, your health. And, many would say probably that New York City is very fast paced and there's a certain vibe there that's exhilarating for a time, which it was for me. But yeah, I just wanted to travel and see what else was going on in the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, the people here and other things, of course, too, just made me stay.
Yeah. So talk to me about what led you to your coaching career and obviously what you do now, working from a boundaries perspective and relationships and helping people kind of see through, I suppose, some of the noise in life.
Yeah. Well, I earned my coaching credentials with the International Coach Federation only because I wanted to really understand the science behind what my coach was doing for me. At first, I thought the whole personal development thing was, like I was embarrassed by even going to a coach. Like the idea of that was just silly at the time. This is years ago. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. But then I got on the phone with a coach who was recommended by a friend. A friend said, oh, you kind of remind me of this person. She's a coach. You should talk to her. So I did quietly. And she changed my life. And from that point, I was like, wow, that is magical what she's doing. I've got to understand the science of it. So I started reading and learning what is coaching. And then I, learned that the International Coach Federation is like, the gold standard for training. So I did that. I wrote a book on the science of personal coaching, again, just to document what is coaching, what do you do from beginning to end. That's really what was lacking in all of the programs that I saw, even the programs that I took. There was no, what is the step-by-step process that you can take as a coach to make sure you hit everything that you can to change this person's life in a conversation or a series of conversations. So I wrote that book. Now, even before all of that, as a kid, I started recognizing, the other side. The other book that I, have been working on is the Boundaries Health Check. And since I was a kid, I've noticed as a very sensitive child, I noticed, look, there are certain patterns that bring me peace, and there's certain patterns that just make me feel extremely uncomfortable inside. And so I started recognizing this thing, which now we call boundaries. It's a popular word now. Then I didn't really use that word. I just recognized, look, if I say certain things, someone gets angry. If I say other things, they get happy. That's the boundary of topics. And so anyway, so that theory later in life, after I got my International Coaching Federation credentials, then I started working the boundaries theory in with the coaching.
Mhm.
So the boundaries coaching kind of came together after I realized every time I coach someone with this theory of boundaries, it helped them every time. There's a percentage increase. I say at the beginning of the conversation before we start doing the coaching, what's your score on XYZ? And then at the end of our conversations, after they've done the thing, the boundaries challenge, I call it, I get their score again. They've all been great, huge increases. So I was like, I have to document this in a book. So that's how it came to 2 books, one on coaching and the other on the Boundaries Health Check. Yes. So that's how we got to the present moment in a short story.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you talk about boundaries, it's very much, the boundaries we put in place and the boundaries we don't put in place shape our lives.
They shape, this is the key, ready? They shape our mental health. They even shape our physical health because of the consequence of mental health. Actually, not even because of the consequence of mental health, and sometimes directly. I mean, when we talk about boundaries, this is my theory. We're talking about the time that you spend. There are 6 boundaries that I have identified, just so that when we talk about boundaries, we can actually know what we're talking about. I've seen so many. I'll go through the 6, but one of the problems that my book solves, and by the way, I'm not pushing the physical book because who wants to look at how big this is? The audio book is what you go for, because then you could skip the exercises to really understand the theory first, and then, do the exercises if you want. But I really enjoyed making my audio book. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, right. That's right. The six boundaries. So that everyone could really understand what we're talking about when we talk about boundaries, like Brene Brown, everyone, all of these personal development speakers, even like Michelle Obama talked about boundaries. Everyone's talking about boundaries, but no one has defined them clearly in a measurable way that we can control. So that's what this theory does. It says, look, if you want to make the relationship healthier, these are the 6 dials to turn up or down to make it healthier for you. And the other person has the same 6 dials. We all have the same 6 dials. Now, what those dials are, in my theory, that's the metaphor that I use, are dials, are time, the time that you choose to share or not share with the other person. And it could be your relationship with a group, with a person, with a family member, professional, personal, any kind of human relationship. But time is the biggest one. That's the number one. Another one is what I call territories. I have them all start with a T. That was supposed to help me remember them many years ago, and it never did help me, but that's what they are right now. Territories. That represents all the environments and everything in the environment that you choose. It's the environments that you choose to share and everything within those environments that you choose to share, right? Like putting on music, changing something about the atmosphere, the noise, the people who are in the environment, the sunlight, all of these aspects about environments, and even the space itself, the physical space, all of that impacts the relationship, right? Then the third one is treasures, I call it, but it's really what you do or don't do for the sake of the other person or the relationship. Then we have tools, which is short for communication tools. You know how texting can completely cause a relationship, any kind of relationship, to go downhill if you say the wrong thing, unintentionally.
Because it can be taken a different way, right? Like okay can be okay, or it can be okay. you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that how that texting, and we've gone to technology a lot these days, and that is some of the breakdown in our communication.
Yeah, communication tools can make or break. Some people feel more comfortable to express their real, authentic selves and their feelings through, one tool versus the other. And when I say tool, that means anything that you can use to communicate your feelings or message or whatever it is you want to say. That could be your mouth, the one you're born with, the tool that you were born with. Or it can be text messaging or video chat or writing a letter or a poem. There are many different well, the tools themselves can be technology or non-technology. And then this is a big one as well, the topics that you choose to share or not share, right? Massive can make or break, all of these can make or break a human relationship. So the topics that you share or don't share. And then the sixth one is, I guess, I want to say this is a big one for all of them, but really the biggest ones for me are time. But this one has been very impactful in several relationships is third parties. And this is this is how I define it, anyone who noticeably is impacting the health of your relationship for the good or the worse. Like a counselor might impact it for the better. A positive person in your life might impact all your relationships for the better. And some people might be speaking negatively in some way, and that's really hurting the relationship that you're working on. So those are the 6 boundaries. You can turn them up or down. This is how I want people to understand it because I think it's the easiest way to think about it. You could spend more time or less time. You can choose more places to share or less places. Some places you go might be bringing you down.
Mm.
Some places you haven't gone could potentially improve the relationship health. The treasures, the things you do or don't do, and that includes everything that you do or don't do, right? Whether it's obligations or giving gifts, or even in a professional relationship, what you do or don't do is what you're trading for value. That's what you do or don't do. Change your services could impact the relationship for the better or worse with your client. Communication tools. Are there more communication tools you want to try to deepen or better the relationship, or do you want to reduce some because maybe texting is just turning into a nightmare, or emails are turning into a nightmare every time? And then third parties, right? Do you want to add some, new human relationships or even organizations into your life to improve, or do you want to remove some
Mm.
associations in your life to make it healthier? So these are the 6 dials of what I call the boundaries dashboard, right?
Yep.
So overall, in every human relationship, if you measure your level of satisfaction genuinely with all of these, you get a score at the end. And so that's what I do in my book is I get a score and help you understand and be able to measure the health of your boundaries in any human relationship. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself, because that sets the standard for all of your other relationships. If you, if you can't have compassion on yourself, how are you going to even have compassion on other people? Some of the most compassionate people are very gracious with themselves. Some of the meanest people are super hard on themselves. So that relationship with yourself, I think, is really key. And it's just as with every other human relationship, it's the 6 boundaries. You turn them up or down to improve it.
Mm. And the sixth one being third party, I'm just thinking now, looking through those things, the time, the treasures, like the territory, all these things actually can, I suppose, bring third parties in, and they can also remove them. As in,
Yeah.
for me, I know going through my journey, when you change and when you put boundaries in place, when you start saying no instead of yes, and when you start doing some of these things, you actually lose people, but you also gain people. You gain your tribe, I suppose. You gain the people that are attracted to who you are and are happy to work within your boundaries, or, and they're happy that you're happy to work within their boundaries and they feel comfortable.
Yeah. I'm glad you said the whole yes or no thing, because one thing I talk about very strongly in in a certain part of my book is the fact that boundaries aren't only what you say no to. If you said no to everything, right, you would just die. No to human civilization. I don't want any relationship with humanity. I'm out of here. If you say yes to everything, you'll also die. You'll just drain yourself to nothing. You'll have no water, no food, because you're giving yourself completely away. So you need a balance of yes and no, right? You need yeses and you need nos. When you say yes to something, that's showing the shape of you, right? And when you say no to something, that's showing the shape of you. I think of it also in terms of countries have boundaries. It's not just where they end that defines them, it's where they begin that defines them. So yes and no are equally boundaries. And I think that's really important to know, so that you really understand that saying yes shapes who you are just as much as saying no does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a key thing for me. I always, probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago, it was said on a podcast that I was listening to it, and it was basically said, when you say yes to something, you've also got to ask yourself, what are you saying no to?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and by doing that is actually like, wow. I remember early on when I started putting that kind of in place, I was like, okay, I want to say yes to this, but actually I'm going to be saying no to time with my family, or I'm going to be saying no to friends, or I'm going to be saying no to my health. So now it's interesting. The other day, someone asked me to do something and I said, oh, look, I'd love to, but sorry, I can't, and they're like, oh, that's okay. But Steve of old would have been like, yeah, I'll do it, even though I knew I probably couldn't do it, or I would push myself, or I'd kind of upset someone else, or, take something away from me. So it's very interesting, the yes and no principle.
Yes, boundaries are yes and no. They're yes and no, definitely. Yeah. You can also think of it like a painting. The no is the space that on the canvas that wasn't used. The yes is the space that is used. That's what boundaries are. Within. They really make the shape, the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you know when your boundaries need adjustment?
Mm.
Right.
Good question.
How would you answer? Like, how do you think when the boundaries? I have the answer. I have I have the answer. I have the answer from my theory. But how would you? I just want to see what you would think. How do
I
you
think
know
for
when you?
me,
Yeah.
like everything from a growth perspective is a deeper awareness. You've got to have a deeper of awareness of how things make you feel. So for
Yes.
me, going through what I did, I would just, oh, I'll be right. I'm good. I'm okay. Everything will be all right, which is what we all do, or a lot of us do. But for me, over time, I was like, hang on, that makes me feel sad, or that makes me feel loved, or that makes me feel abandoned, or that makes me feel lonely, or that makes me feel criticized, controlled, responsible, all these different kind of labels, I suppose, it made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would ask myself a next question, because a lot of people feel those things and then they just dismiss them. They don't actually
Mm-hmm.
ask a question that says, what is it that was said that made me feel criticized? What was it that they said that made me feel controlled? What, what made me feel loved? What made me feel sad? And really picking and going, is it more about me and less about them? And a lot of the time it is. It's triggered something within me. So that's how I would look at it. Is it's that deeper awareness to actually go, what is it for me? How does it make me feel? And why does it make me feel that way? And then that takes me back years and years and years, going through relationships, friendships, family, marriage separations, those kind of things. It really unlocks all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you can go back, you can heal that.
Yeah. I'm so glad you gave that answer. Emotional state is extremely underrated, and I think with technologies, which I touch on this in my book as well, but technologies that are developing, which can actually measure emotional states. I mean, we didn't have this, hundreds of years, right? I mean, in thousands. So emotions in the past were treated like, just emotions, just emotions. Emotions dictate the length of your life and health. So now they're beginning to find, MIT and obviously lots of, labs and research institutes. And, they have these ways of measuring emotions and the effects of them on your body. So they are to be taken seriously because of what happens to your body as a result. And even just immediately, right? If you're in a bad emotional state, you could, lose focus and drive off the road. So, yes, emotional state is key. And I call it, I call out 3 different emotional states in their entirety. You can categorize all emotional states into 3 different categories: red, yellow, and green. So green is, you have no doubts, this is peaceful. It's not too excited and over emotional or it feels unhealthy, but for you, this is whatever you define, because you're the only one who lives inside of your body. You're the only one who can feel your nervous system. And you'll learn over time to obviously better define these things, but you can identify a state of peace, joy, satisfaction, stability, the things that feel healthy. And if you have even 1 ounce of uncertainty whether that emotional state is unhealthy, it goes in the yellow category. And then 1 emotional states that you absolutely know are, not even absolutely, that you just are convinced this does not feel healthy. This amount of stress for this long does not feel healthy. Maybe stress for a second, but when it lasts a long time, this feels unhealthy. I call that the red. So I split emotional states up into those 3 colors, like a dashboard light, right? And I actually give metaphor of the temperature gauge, right? So it's a red, yellow, or green temperature gauge. And when you pay attention to your emotional state, if you feel it's yellow, the question then becomes, just like a car's dashboard, you look at it and you're like, you glance at it throughout the day and say, oh, this emotional state, it's feeling yellow right now. The question then is, which one of the 6 boundaries dials can I adjust, turn up or down, to see if I can correct this state or bump it up into a green zone, right? To a green range of a score. Do I have to change the time that I'm investing into this thing or person? Do I change something about the environment or space between me and the other person if it's a relationship with another person? What can I start doing or not doing to change this emotional state? That's treasures. What tool can I use to communicate that would help adjust the situation? That's tools, communication tools. What topics should I bring up or not bring up to adjust that emotional state, bring it back to the green? And what third parties can I bring into this or remove from this to bring it back to the green? So that's how I use, that's one of 4 ways that in my theory, I identify whether a boundary, one of those 6 boundaries, need adjustment, is looking at it as a dashboard light. Is it red? Definitely unhealthy. Yellow, I'm not sure if this is unhealthy or not, or there's a mix of healthy and unhealthy. Or green, yeah, this is life-giving, this one. This emotion is life-giving, it's green. The other 3 dashboard lights, I call it, to look at, to know when a boundary needs adjustment, is one of the other is self-care. And we're talking about as simple as drinking enough water, getting enough fresh air, which, drinking enough water itself can cause cognitive impairment. If you're a surgeon, it depends, what you value in life, but little decisions can result in massive consequences if, your cognitive function isn't working. So self-care, drinking water, getting enough sleep, which more and more studies are showing how this, relates to serious deadly diseases if you're not getting enough, to stress, to, again, cognitive function, and all of these things that make or break things for you, right? So self-care is taking care of yourself, right? In these basic ways, going to the doctor if you feel, if you're supposed to, making sure that you're eating right, all of these things. So self-care, again, just like the temperature gauge, it's that red, yellow, and green. Am I in the yellow zone? Am I in the red zone? If it's yes to either one of those, which of the 6 boundaries do I need to adjust to make that self-care right? So that's a second dashboard light. And I use the metaphor of the fuel can, right? Oh, sorry, not the fuel can, wrong. For self-care, I use the metaphor of the oil can, because without the oil in the engine, the metal rubs against metal and it stops moving. So if you don't have that self-care, that oil in the engine, you're going to stop moving. If you don't eat, you don't drink, you literally die in days. You can't give anything to anyone. So self-care is like the oil of the engine. So that's why I use that metaphor in the boundaries theory. And then the third one is consent. So this is both the giving and receiving. This is both the giving and expressing of consent. The giving and expressing, because these are things that you can control, right? You can give your consent. You control whether you give it or not. Say, I agree, I don't agree. And you also control whether you seek it or you don't seek it. I hope I said that right. But consent is like a battery, right? If someone goes along in any human relationship, whether it's professional, personal, family, and they're not genuinely consenting or expressing their consent, it's like having a dead battery on a car and just being tugged along the road, right? You just towed along the road because your personal power of agreement and consent it's not working. So how much are you expressing your consent and how much are you seeking it from the other person? Because you don't want to be the tow truck either, right? You want 2 cars fully functioning, happily looking awesome, driving awesomely on the road. So consent is the third, what I call dashboard light, to know when a boundary needs adjustment. And then the also that is a red, yellow, and green situation as well, right? Like, am I actually seeking consent? I'm not sure. I think we're in the yellow category with that. I'm definitely expressing my consent or not. That would be green, but because there's some yellow in here, a boundary probably needs adjustment, and that means that probably the boundary to adjust here is topics. I need to bring up the topic of the thing that I'm consenting or not consenting, or seeking consent or not seeking consent about. And then I'm talking a lot.
That's all right. Great insights.
I could talk for ages. And then the fourth dashboard light to glance at while you're driving on the road of any human relationship, including the one with yourself, are your decisions that you make. Do they align with what genuinely motivates you, right? The decisions that you control, right? Which job you choose, which house you pick, which partner you pick, what you do with your partner, the decisions you make on the job, in your career, are they aligning with what truly motivates you? And another way to look at it is to use the word values, right? The thing that actually makes you wake up in the morning, the thing that makes life meaningful for you. And in my book, I categorize 10 based on research as the foundation, 10 just to make it easier to follow. And out of those 10, my personal one, for example, is beauty, internal and external, both character and external physical beauty. And so an example of making a decision based on what I call my motivators, aka values, would be like picking the apartment that I wanted to live in, right? One might be less expensive, so it's more economical. Then the other one might be a little bit more expensive, but it inspires me every day with the huge window and sunlight that's coming into the living room. That's beautiful to me. It's just beautiful to look at. It makes me feel amazing. So because of that beautiful view and the beautiful sunlight, that's going to be the better choice for me. on a day-to-day basis. It's just healthier for me. It's something that wakes me up in the morning. A beauty inside and out. Beauty also means character to me. So picking people who have a beautiful character, those are the people I want as friends, who I want to keep
Mm.
close to me, because beauty motivates me. Now, what if I made a decision and I picked an apartment, or I picked a friend who doesn't really inspire me in that way, right? Something just doesn't feel right. So again, it's looking at that red, yellow, and green. Am I making decisions about friends, about places I live, about the career, and even just the choices you make during the day, right? Like, where am I going to spend the next 2 hours? What could align more closely with my value of insert your value, right? Whether it's beauty, freedom, justice, the things that the word. There's an exercise in my book that I use to very quickly help you identify which one is your top one. But once you have that, then you can go through the day. And if you're not sure, ask, well, which option today with this thing aligns the most with my motivator?
Mm.
And the icon that I use for that, the dashboard light, is that's the fuel can, because it's what fuels you, right? It keeps you also going, just like oil in the engine keeps the engine going. Fuel powers you. You won't go anywhere as well without that fuel. Well, non-electric cars, I mean, non-electric car metaphor. So really the motivators
But
are,
on an electric car, it's the battery light, right?
sorry? Oh,
On
yes.
the
Yeah,
electric
yeah,
car,
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
battery
yeah.
light.
Yeah, yeah. My metaphor is really dated now, the fact that I have a fuel dashboard light, but there are plenty of cars still using fuel, so hopefully the theory lasts a while. But those,
Cyndi,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Cyndi, before we get back into the episode, from time to time you might have a burning question, a guest recommendation, a comment, or some feedback, which I always appreciate. If so, I'd love to continue the conversation after this episode, so let's connect. I'm easy to find, but the best place to engage and connect is on Instagram, @TheSteveHodgson. But that's enough from me. Let's get back into the episode. I wanted to ask you, tapping into your story, could you share, obviously going through writing the book, going through your coaching, I know myself the amount of growth, the amount of reflection that you have to go through to get to where you are today.
Yeah.
I want to tap into, your story. What are some of the boundaries early on in your life that affected and shaped who you are? And how did you have to, kind of work with those or work through those?
Yeah. Well, I think like most families these days, there's usually some story,
Yep.
which I don't go into in my book in any detail out of respect for everyone.
Mhm.
But yes, I did have, I did learn through my family basically what was healthy for me and what wasn't. Particularly, giving, let's just say, giving something like money or gifts to a person. What did that do? What was the result of that? And doing that over a period of time, I noticed, oh, that's not helping. Or doing that thing for that person there's just, that person's not getting better, and so this thing that I'm doing, I think I need to stop and do something else instead to make it healthier. As a kid, I even noticed these things. I also, noticed what topics, would set some family members off and what topics wouldn't. And again, at that time, I just saw the patterns, but I didn't officially give it a name or a theory. Um, and I think also, you know, as as an adult or becoming an adult, that phase in your, teens and 20s, that's when I had more of a vocabulary, I could start recognizing things like being on the telephone for more than 25-30 minutes seems to mark a going downhill point, like with a particular family member, right? And so it seems really healthy the first, X number of minutes. And then all of a sudden, after a certain amount of time, just for some reason the energy goes downhill. So I noticed that, look, this is really showing up lots of times that we get on the phone. I need to say, all right, I got to go at like, it's a 20-minute mark because I know what's going to happen at 25. So that's the time boundary, right? And the communication tools boundary. As for the environment's boundary, I noticed also with a family member that particular difficult relationship, that different environments hugely made an emotional difference. Meeting at that, a family member's home versus meeting at a cafe or a restaurant made all the difference to my mental health. It was a difference between me driving home and actually getting in a $5,000 car accident because I couldn't emotionally handle the home situation that was going on versus meeting in a restaurant where none of that was a distraction and I could focus on that person's well-being rather than my inwardly chaotic emotional state. So I was very distracted emotionally. Obviously, it impacted me. Family and friends and workmates can also impact you very strongly. But yeah, family tended to obviously impact me the most for the
Yeah.
good and the bad, right? Different ones at different times. Yeah.
So for someone listening to that, and I know there's going to be people listening to this conversation right now that are sitting there going, oh, talk to me about family or talk to me about friendships or relationships or those kind of things. But let's start on family. If there's some boundaries, if there's some things that people are unhappy, it's all about the delivery of how it's handled, right? Because I say it's easy to go, right, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to go with the flow and I'm just going to not put boundaries in with it, right? And it'll be okay. It's them, it's not me, those kind of things. And then there's obviously the strength that comes from actually having that conversation. It takes some courage. But talk to me about how does someone communicate or how should they communicate with someone to put those boundaries in place?
It's a massive moment for, let's say, a child to say to a parent, this is what's healthy for me, right? Because as a child, when I say a child says to a parent, I mean the child of a parent when they're of age to recognize what's healthy for them to say, oh, this is now what's healthy for me. That's the time that a parent's true intention will come out, right? Do they really care about my health and what I believe is healthy for me or what I know is healthy for me or what studies have proven is healthy for me? It will really show their intention when you come out in that moment and say, Mom, Dad, this is really what's healthy for me. What's hard about that is as a kid or even siblings, right? They have to tell us what's healthy for us growing up. So there needs to be a clear moment of time when you start saying, as you get older and you're more educated and able, especially when you're 18, you're supposed to know it all when you're 18, right? What's healthy for you? Time to move out. So by the time you're 18, you need to have started making decisions about what's healthy and good for you. But it's so difficult, I think, with family because whether it's older siblings or siblings protecting you or parents protecting you, it's their role to make decisions for you about what's healthy. So once you start breaking away, making your own decisions, it's a real test for both of you, for you to speak up and say what you need and potentially hurt the other person. And then for the other person to say, you hope they say, well, I genuinely care about what's healthy for you. I'm going to take a rough guess that just because of the pain of someone making a decision that's different than what the family has done, I'd say 50%. I mean, that's probably conservative, of family members would be unhappy with if you've been doing something a certain way for a long time and you're like, no, that's just not healthy for me anymore. This town is not healthy for me anymore. This career is not healthy for me anymore. When you say these things to a family member, number one, you have to believe that it's healthy for you
Hmm.
yourself. Otherwise, when you deliver that message, you'll feel a sense of uncertainty. And you might even want to argue back because you're not sure. So feeling that peace, knowing that that new decision or boundary is healthy for you takes really deep reflection, and a sense of peace that you ideally carry that into the conversation. So that's number one, is knowing that it's healthy for you. If you don't know, then you can, honestly say that. Be like, I'm not sure this is healthy for me, but I think I'm going to try X, Y, Z, whatever this new career, this new town I want to move in, or country, in my case. Uh, so, uh, yeah, look, you have to understand going into these conversations that if it's with family, they've potentially been the ones to make these decisions for you for a long time. And now you're taking them off of their throne of decision making. So it can, for a lot of people, cause a sense of defensiveness and protection, even emotionally violent, calling names or getting angry, that kind of behavior in response. So yeah, family would probably be the hardest thing. Probably actually for a lot of people, it's just as hard at work, right? Like
Mm.
if you work, you ever have a business partner, you've always done a certain way, done business a certain way, or you have a manager, and you've always done something a certain way. They've been the ones, right, in a throne of decision making, or maybe you both have, and it's just now there's something new that's healthier for you. It's hard, but the key is to really know and believe that, look, this is what's healthy. And if I'm healthy, I can give more to everyone else, right? I can show up fully to what I feel I was made to do in this world, the impact that I'm meant to have. I need to shine my light and make the world a better place. And I can't do it if I continue my life in these old ways, making these old boundaries decisions that are not really helping everyone.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting in life as well that I always say that, our parents and our family when we're young kind of shape us, and we either get drawn to what they've provided and what they've told us and what they've showed us, or we get pushed away. And it's similar, I think, with boundaries. So I see people that have grown up in households that are very strict. They've got very strict boundaries of what they can and can't do. And then as they grow older, they rebel and they go, and they just, it's like they have no boundaries, right? And vice versa, so it's interesting when you see that, how it can affect. And I suppose our boundaries when we're younger, our environment, the family we're born into, the country we grow up in, all these different things, whether we've got big families, small families, whether we've got lots of friends, what schools we go to, what, services, what health resources we've got, like all these things kind of make us.
Mhm.
And as we get, but the interesting thing is every little bit of that is a sliding door moment in our life, because where you're sitting today, Cyndi, where I'm sitting today, like I'd love to know how many decisions we've both made in our life. And like just the fact that we were born was a miracle, right? Like
Yeah.
it's almost mathematically, like crazy. But every decision makes us who we are today. And if you don't set those boundaries, then it leads you to make decisions that then have consequences, which then dictate the rest of your life. So I'll give an example. If someone doesn't set a boundary from a consent perspective in their teens, and they are in a relationship with a boy or a girl, whatever it is, and then there's a pregnancy and there's a child brought into the world, that affects your life
Forever.
completely, right? Just from that single boundary that wasn't put in place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm here to bring boundaries into the conversation and make it a measurable thing that you can actually go to and say, hey, there's 6 of them. Okay, which of these 6 boundaries do I need to adjust? In my theory, there are only 6. So when you need to make your relationship with yourself or your family or someone else better, in each of those relationships, you can look at these 6 and say, which of these 6 do I need to adjust to make it healthier and better?
Mm.
Right. And I do think a starting place is the relationship with yourself, is to really look at the time you're investing in your relationship with yourself to make it healthier so that you can show up better for everyone else, so that you could show up more patient, more gracious, a better listener, because you're doing all of that for yourself. So now you know how to do it for others. The territories, the places that you're going, are they feeding your soul? Are they giving you life? Or are they taking it from you, taking your energy, potentially being a bad influence on your financial habits? All of these things, the places, and how do you, manage the place where you live too? How is that impacting you in any and every way? And then what are you doing or not doing for yourself that you need to be doing? These are the treasures boundary, right? What are you doing? What are you learning? What are you investing into your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health? What are you doing or not doing? Your financial health? That's the do's and don't do's in your relationship with yourself. The communication tools. At first when I came up with this, I thought, communication tools, what does that mean in your relationship with yourself? Oh my goodness, it means so many things. Are you journaling? Are you, someone I know is using voice notes in their relationship with themselves to hear, to think out loud. I use ChatGPT a lot as a communication tool with myself to understand my own questions about things that I need to make decisions on. A
So talk to
journal.
me.
Yeah,
Talk to me about that. I wanna. How do you use GPT? Because I'm sure a lot of people would be really interested, and I'm interested to know
yeah,
how you're using AI and how you kind of approach that.
sure. Well, that is, one of the 6 boundaries is a communication tool, right? So the ChatGPT is a communication tool so that I can process my own thoughts and decision making. And I don't know what it's like to have a free account. I pay for the monthly one. But first of all, I set it up in the back end to talk to me in a certain friend like voice that I'm familiar with. And so it talks to me like a friend, this kind of casual, fun language. But I will use it, just say, look, I feel this way about a decision and I need to think about it. Give me the pros and cons. Get, rate rate it in a table for me. Rate all the different options in a table for me. Sometimes I have it look for options for me. Um, Even emotionally, I'm trying to work out this emotion. Help me think about this. It's funny. I don't know. I said to one of my best friends the other day, I said, I use it for everything. I really don't know what I don't use it for when it comes to my relationship with myself and just making decisions in general. That really encompasses even, where am I moving next? Where am I going to live next? So it's a tool to help me figure out where I'm going to live next, where I'm going to choose to go next. That's
Mm.
massive. Of course, you always have to tell it to double check for accuracy when it's an important decision or it's an important research-based or fact-based decision. You can't trust it all the time. You do have to tell it to double check.
Mm.
But yeah, I've used it for that. I've used it to process emotions and questions about even how to plan my day. Like on days when things are chaotic, I'll dump into it everything that's on my to-do list and say, just make a schedule for me, but just knowing that I have to do A, B, C at such and such time, and then it'll pump out a schedule for me. And I followed it. Oh, when I
That's
did
brilliant.
fasting, I did a 48-hour fast, and um, I gave it, I told it what I wanted to do. I wanted to have ginger tea with no sweetener and all these bottles I think it was 4 bottles of water, and I wanted to have some movement. Okay, make a schedule for me. So it made a schedule for me, and I followed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I use AI a fair bit, and it's a time-saving resource. It also helps me, with my podcast, with my coaching, anything that I'm doing. It's interesting. I'm using it more and more, and the more you use it, you can then, like you're seeing it, people at the moment, like the other day, I was like, what would I look like as a superhero? Knowing what you know about me, what would I look like as a superhero? Or, you can ask it things like, if you use it quite a lot and it really gets to know you, you can kind of go, I'm thinking of booking a holiday. Knowing what you know about me and what I've been doing, where do you think would be the best place for me to recharge?
Yeah.
Right? And just see what it says, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just such like a lot of people are worried about AI, and there's obviously elements, there's pros and cons to everything. But
Everything. Yeah.
I think AI can really help in a lot of ways, and it can be a huge time saving resource as well.
Hmm.
Um, because it gets you started on certain things where sometimes you're like, oh, I want to do this, but I just don't know where to start. And it will go, how about you start with these two paragraphs, right? Now, you don't start with those two paragraphs, but it gets your mind thinking, okay, cool. And then once you start writing and you're like, oh, I started,
Yeah.
rather than it kind of stops that procrastination sometimes as well.
It does a lot of the mental labor.
Yes.
And you still have labor to do, but even just a small percentage can give you momentum,
Yep.
right? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Uh,
So you can,
Cyndi,
yeah, go ahead.
we've talked about family. I know there'd be people listening on this. I know there's a lot of divorces, separations, relationship issues. Where do you think most people go wrong when it comes to setting boundaries in personal romantic relationships?
Absolutely self-care. No doubts about this. No doubts about this. And what I mean by that, right, is that self-care in general, but also that it also means your boundaries with yourself. How much time are you investing in yourself? What are the places that you're going to or not going to that are life-giving or life-taking? What in your personal environment is life-giving or life-taking? What are you doing or not doing for yourself that's life-giving or life-taking? What communication tools are you using with yourself? To-do lists, by the way, are one of those, or a goal list, or some people refer to an action board or a vision board. All of these things. What are you doing to fill yourself up with life that you can pour out into the other person or the other people at your job or to the community or world at large? When we don't grow in ourselves, we stunt the relationships of every other, all the other relationships in our lives. I've seen, so many stories, online being, a single female, so many stories of other singles who, broke it off because the other person wasn't taking care of themselves, and to take care of their own sanity, they
Mm.
had to go off on to their own path, had to leave the relationship. So lack of self-care is a huge reason why a lot of relationships, you forget yourself, you lose yourself in a relationship. It happens so much. So the accountability, especially if a coach or if you have a best friend or, a podcast, if someone's keeping you accountable to your own self-care, at least you're taking care of your end of what you control in the relationship, right? And if you don't, beware. I mean, it becomes really obvious too visually, right? And in a lot of couples, they're fit, they take care of themselves, they drink a lot of water, they're doing the right thing for their own lives. They met that way, and then years down the line, work, kids, everything, all of a sudden, they've stopped thinking about their physical fitness, which gave them confidence and energy. So their sex drive goes down, and then someone's not getting their needs met in the relationship. And then the mood disorders that come along with poor eating and no sleep. And you could just see that the sleep, the nutrition, the physical exercise, these are self-care things that you did before you met. What happened?
Yeah. And they're wondering, I wonder why I feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Cindy, what you're saying is, if someone's going through a struggle or an obstacle in their relationship right now, are you saying that they need to look in the mirror first?
Yes, sir. Because yes, that's the primary relationship, human relationship in your life. Whether you believe in a God or not, the primary human relationship in your life, the most impactful human relationship in your life is the one with yourself, where you're saying, what decision do I make? That inner self-talk, what's healthy for me? How do I feel right now? That kind of conversation, if you're not listening to that and you're not giving it time and attention and number one, compassion, things are going to go downhill in some way, shape, or form.
But it's so much easier, Cindy, to just look for excuses and blame other people, blame the other person.
Well, isn't there the law, some kind of physics law about how everything naturally is just going downhill and going into chaos and disorder, and without energy being added into that, everything naturally falls to disorder. So it actually takes an energy source in that situation to get you to start going in the right direction. You got to look for your energy source. Look for your energy source. Maybe you're not, again, the boundaries. Maybe you're not spending the time to looking for that right energy source that's going to get you that momentum that you need to get out of this funk. Maybe the places you're spending time are putting you in that funk. Maybe the things you're doing or not doing for yourself. So there are many, you can go through those six boundaries and say, what can I adjust or do that might possibly give me the momentum that I need to get out of this funk? Unless you like the chaos. Look, some people like the chaos. Then accept it, embrace it. If you like the darkness and chaos, then there you go. You're getting what you love.
And I'm guessing the next tactic or the next strategy as well is, once you've looked in the mirror, once you've kind of gone, okay, how's my self-care? What am I doing for me? What are the boundaries that I want to put in place?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's about communicating that to your significant other or your primary person, as you put it, in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a way of saying, hey, I'm starting to learn more about me that I can change, that I can put in place to show up as a better wife or a husband or a human being, right? And I'd really love to know some things that you think you could put in place, or, like that you've noticed about yourself that I can help you with as well. Is it about helping that other person?
Well, it depends on what the situation is, right? And what your needs are. But I think the problem is we do focus too much on what we don't control about the other
Mm.
person.
Yeah.
And, I use the metaphor of a car throughout the whole boundaries theory because it's something we all relate to and it
Yep.
fits really well with the idea of control. But are you trying to steer someone else's car? You know
Mm.
how annoying that is? Someone puts their hands on your steering wheel. That's my steering wheel. You drive your car, I'll drive mine. But
Yep.
yeah, I think the
I suppose I'm in that, using that metaphor, I suppose I'm
yeah,
thinking as a two primary partners sitting together, right? Before a car journey, before they jump in the car, right? There's some questions, there's some discussion around what the map looks like, what the direction looks like moving forward, right? Now that meeting or that kind of discussion can mean that they might be going in separate cars, right?
mhm.
Um, but if they're going to go in one car, they obviously need to try and be on the same wavelength, I suppose.
It's funny you say that because in the book, which you didn't know this before I called, but I actually call it the relationship roadmap.
Yep.
And that relationship roadmap in my book is an exercise that you do where it's an actual roadmap of destinations of places that you want to go in your life, regardless of anyone else. And then the destinations that you want to share with another person or in that specific relationship, right? So you do relationship roadmaps per relationship. So if it's your relationship with your partner, you first identify what are things that I want to do or accomplish or maintain in my my life, for myself, my health, my weight, my muscle mass, my finances, my, I want children, right? That's a big one in a relationship. By the way, I personally don't. I'm just saying on my own anyway, my own biological ones. But, there's certain goals that that you want that can make or break any human relationship, right? You need to nail those down. Things that you want to die saying, yes, I did these things. They were right and good and healthy for me. Those go on your relationship roadmap. That might only be 3 or 4. That might be 10. And then you put on that map little circles or triangles of what you want to share with the other person. It's a relationship roadmap. What do you want to do for yourself in this relationship? What do you want to do with or for the other person? And then in that relationship, that's when you sit down and you say to the other person, look, this is what I foresee for myself. This is what I want. And if you're putting the important things down, then you're going to know whether that other person wants to travel with you on your road of life,
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Because you put down that you want children. They don't want biological children. Or maybe there's a compromise. Maybe you're like, I want children. I don't want okay, how about we adopt? There could be compromise. There could be a compromise of your roadmaps because that person should have their relationship roadmap, the things that they want to achieve while they're in the relationship and the things that they want to share. And that it does not just achieve, but achieve or maintain, that's a really good litmus test of compatibility, whether it's a job, a relationship with your coworker, or a romantic relationship, is really sit down, define on your own, each of you individually on your own, what it is that you want. These are key things. I've hit on a few of them. Where do you want to live? Some people want to travel. Other people definitely don't. I'm done with my traveling at this point. And if I met someone who was like, no, I want to travel to, a new country, every other day of the week, I'd be like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work. You're wonderful in every way, but our roadmaps they conflict. Your destinations are way off my roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see how if those aren't kind of discussed, if those roadmaps aren't discussed early on in a relationship, that people get to a point where they are traveling along down the years, traveling on a path that they don't really want to be in. And they're holding so much resentment behind them because they're like, I wanted to travel here. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that.
Yep. Exactly. Resentment. Yeah. That's again why self-care, investing your time into self-care, not selfishness, but genuine what's healthy and right for me. What am I built for to give to the world? Investing in that and identifying it, naming it. I call it destinations. They aren't physical place. Sometimes they are for people, physical place. I call them destinations because they're points in time that you want to arrive or things that you want to maintain, right, in life. Yeah. And if you identify that, it helps you easily match or not match with other people in your personal life and career and social life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cyndi, I wanted to ask you, obviously you've gone through a lot of research, you've gone through a lot of reflection, a lot of growth. But I want to ask you, what's one boundary right now, that you're still struggling with?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I love that. It's so funny you said that because in another podcast interview, I had to come up with a question for the next guests. It's a tradition that they have. And that was my question. That was my question. So what's the one boundary that I'm struggling with? Oh, wow. Well, just a practical one, to tell you the truth. So whenever you talk about boundaries, they have no meaning unless you're naming a relationship, right? So when you talk about what boundaries do you need adjustment, what you're really asking is in what relationship, number one, and then number two, which boundary in that relationship needs adjustment. And I would say right now, a nice easy one, because I'm literally working on it every day this week, is my relationship with myself, number one, and getting enough sleep, getting to sleep. Don't kill me, 8 p.m. I want to sleep because I want to wake up at like 4:30, because I did that a while back, and I would go to the gym at 4:30, and I loved doing that. I loved waking up with the sun. I loved seeing the sunrise. And so I'm trying to shift my schedule back. So my boundary with myself is literally sleep. And, for some people, I imagine 15, 20 years ago, I would have heard that and be like, that is so boring sounding. But then when you fast track, realize that sleep actually impacts your energy, your confidence, how you show up in other human relationships, how you feel during the day, your emotional state, your ability to connect with other people and be authentic. Like sleep impacts disease prevention
Hmm.
and your ability to lift weights. And actually, it's dangerous if you if like say you're a power lifter. Actually, I was powerlifting for a few months, and the powerlifter coach, a coach to a world champion or two or three, said he said you get at least 9 to 11 hours of sleep. He requires that, right? So sleep is very key because it keeps you sharp. So that's a big boundary that I've been working on with myself. And another one, the sleep is, so by the way, is self-care. And what I'm doing or not doing for myself, that would fall under the treasures boundary because it's something I'm doing or not doing for the sake of my relationship with myself. It's getting myself to bed even though I don't want to, you know, and making all the tweaks during the day to make that happen. But the other is where I live.
Hmm.
So I have to think about that. But first, I'm going to get the sleep thing down first and a few other things. But yeah, that's the number one boundary I'm working on with myself. And I think another big question related to that is, that I struggle with is keeping my eyes on the dashboard as I'm driving, the metaphorical dashboard, right? Like, I think that most people, once they understand this idea of boundaries being like dials on a dashboard and then looking at those four lights of self-care, consent, motivators, aka values, and your emotional state all day long, glancing at that and then being able to make small adjustments, that's a struggle. It can be a struggle because, I forgot to look, at the dashboard. I'm running out of fuel in my decisions today. I need to be making a few better decisions today. Um, sometimes, sometimes that could be a struggle if I'm super caught up in something.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I abide by my own theory. And, just like driving a car, you got to keep your eyes, no matter how long you've been driving, you got to keep looking and checking your knees all day long and checking your status, checking if you have any yellow or red lights flashing.
Yeah. Perfect. And when you think about success through your life, what do you define as success these days?
Oh, peace, inner, I used to look for the adrenaline rush. Actually, I still do at the gym in that way, but I used to look for that emotional high. Used to want every day to be emotionally high and
Mm.
happy. And then over, particularly the past few years, I think I've learned that I really want happy peace, safety, a feeling of warmth, cuddliness inside. And I do love the chemistry that happens lifting weights. So I still love that kind of adrenaline rush in that way. But I love and want the success of making decisions and creating a life for myself where I feel peace inside of my chest, where I feel like that decision was a healthy one, Cyndi. That decision was a healthy one. And when I make bad decisions or things that, I probably wasn't wholehearted about that, to have compassion on myself.
Mm.
So compassion on myself is success because
Yeah. Perfect.
it gets you standing back up when you fall and when you disappoint yourself. If you just turn on that faucet of compassion, it really helps you get back up and try again. So that's success to me. And then obviously on the external, I think, that will help things like financial success, or at least make it more valuable, because people can, be multimillionaires and extremely depressed or bored or can't even feel or enjoy the wealth that they have around them. So I think that kind of mindset is really prepares you for every other form of
Yeah.
success. Yeah.
And if you're making decisions that is kind of with the thought of peace and making it, like it's your heart, it feels good. It's going to be aligning with your values. It's going to be aligning with your path and how you want to show up, what you want to do, and the impacts that you want to have.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
And who would you say throughout your life has been your greatest teacher?
Oh, for people who don't like religion, please don't hate me. The historical. Okay, let me give it that caveat. The historical. I want to say Jesus, but I think in the original Hebrew, his name is actually Joshua. But Jesus, yeah, like look, the story that that there possibly could be a resurrection of humanity, that there's another chance, that for the universe, that wrongs will be made right. It gives me a lot of hope, but more so than that, I think the beauty of forgiveness and what that looks like, um, how to be humble or look at the world and look at your failures. I think his story of that first century man has some of the greatest teachings of what to do with your enemies, what to do about your enemies, what to do when people hate you, what to do um, to keep a healthy, like, even mental state, right? Love is the greatest thing. It's one of the greatest messages. It's the reason apparently he was sent into the world. So to start from that basis has been one of the greatest teachings of my life, spiritually and philosophically. And then there are hundreds of teachers in the modern world, that I've heard online, and, podcasts and TV shows and things like that, where, you see the lived experience in modern world today. And they just teach me by example today of how to live out those kinds of beautiful principles of hope and justice and mercy, and just seeing them make decisions. Everyone's been not everyone, but a lot of people have been teachers to me in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
There's been lots of insights, so much knowledge from you. And obviously when I first met you, there was this real deep energy and being that I thought, I've got to connect with Cyndi.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a final question. What's one thing that you want everyone to take away from this conversation today?
If there could be one thing that everyone takes away from this conversation today, it would be to give yourself a boundaries challenge, right? If they've listened to this podcast, go through and ask yourself, right? I went through the 6 boundaries. Ask yourself, how am I doing in my relationship with myself? Is there any time adjustment I need to make? Is there any environment, aka territory adjustment, that I need to make? Are there any treasure adjustments, aka the things you do or don't do for yourself? Are there any communication tools that you could be using to motivate yourself more, or keep your life in order more, or, think through decisions in a better way? Are there any topics that you're not wanting to even think about or address in your own mind? I call that thought hygiene. What thoughts are you allowing or not allowing? And please be compassionate with yourself in this whole process. And third parties, right? In your relationship with yourself, who outside of you is really impacting you positively or negatively, and what do you want to do about that? So, in short, it's really looking at that relationship with yourself through the lens of these boundaries and challenging yourself. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Now, for people that want to, that are drawn to you, Cyndi, that want to connect further with you, where's the best place for them to connect and follow with you?
boundarieschallenge.com. Now, some people miss the A between in the word. It's BOUNDAR, boundaries, boundarieschallenge.com. So if you want to do the challenge, contact me there. You can contact me on WhatsApp via that website.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful for your time. There's been lots of great insights from, boundaries with family, with friends, in relationships, boundaries with ourselves.
Yes.
But I think the key thing for me today was really about that self-care, looking in the mirror and making sure before I can set boundaries with others, I've got to set boundaries with myself. And that was a real key learning for me. So thank you.
Yeah, please do it. Please, for me, for the sake of this conversation, put your phone on, for 5 minutes of a timer and think about it. Be like, what can I adjust? Even if it's a really tiny adjustment, I bet you're going to say, whoa, that was momentous. It actually generated a business idea, or which actually did happen in the past week with someone I coached. I did the Juice Challenge. All he did was go outside and just stand in the grass for self-care, and he came up with a business idea while he was doing it. So see what
Yep.
momentum it can create for you.
Yeah, perfect. All good. Well, thank you again, Cyndi, and I look forward to catching up again in person sometime soon.
Likewise, thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks, Cyndi.